I now want to bring in a couple of economists to break down this jobs report. Joining me is from sort of, you could argue, stage right, Douglas Holtz-Eakin, former CBO director during the George W. Bush era, if you will, CBO being Congressional Budget Office, but also an advisor to many Republican presidential candidates. Austin Goolsbee, he was the former Council of Economic Advisors chairman under President Obama. So let's start with the basics on this jobs report. Austin, is it good, not great, or fair, not good? Is it sort of, it feels like frankly, a B-, where you're like, okay, it's above average, but I wish it were better.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a tough grade, but I think that spirit is exactly right. It's fairly solid. We want it to be better. I think now that we're getting control of the spread of the virus, I think it probably is going to get better as the months go forward. But, you know, we're still a long way down in the hole. I don't think President Biden's wrong that we've made a lot of progress. And I don't think the critics are wrong that we still got a long way to go.
You know, Doug, how would you describe this sort of, it's funny, Stephanie Ruhle earlier sort of described it as there's almost like a showdown on these low-wage jobs. We saw in this last report, the wages inched up on these low-wage jobs. And so acceptance inched up. Is that what we're looking at here, that you do have a sector of the labor force who is looking for better wages on some of these lower wage job openings?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is there's some really strong numbers in this report. I mean, if you look at payrolls, which is workers times hours worked each week times hourly wages, it grew at an annual rate of 11.3%. That's off the charts. In part, it's because wages grew at 6.1%. That's off the charts. So the Achilles heel is that labor force participation on the whole didn't budge, so we're not getting workers coming back and taking jobs even at these higher wages. And among the least educated, less than high school education, since January, labor force participation has dropped by 2 full percentage points. That's really something that is going the wrong direction and very much at odds with what went on in 2018 and 19 when those very workers came in and got jobs and got raises.
So, Austin, what's the formula here? Is this just, you know, Paul Krugman used the metaphor that, look, this is all going to happen. This is tires squealing, and eventually your car's going to go fast, but you're not moving yet. What did you make of that metaphor? And is that where we're looking at, or do we need to goose the labor shortage issue here a little bit?
Well, I mean, the only thing I'd say is if you're a person who thinks that this is coming from UI, then you got to look at this monthly number and see yet again, for the third month in a row, massive blockbuster leading sector is leisure and hospitality. It's exactly the sector you wouldn't think would be coming back strongest. And the people dropping out of the labor force, if you're on UI, you count as unemployed. You're not dropping out of the labor force if you're on UI. So I don't think it's necessarily tires squealing. As Doug said, this is actually quite a solid report. The only thing that makes this somewhat modest or disappointing is that the hole was so deep, we need more than this on a sustained basis.
Well, Doug, do you have an idea of what you would do to, I mean, besides taking away the extra unemployment, is there another way in your mind to goose this labor shortage issue?
I don't see an easy way to do it, Chuck. I mean, this isn't something where you send out stimulus checks and solve the problem. You got to figure out why people are unable to return to jobs they previously had, or go search for jobs which are advertised everywhere at increasingly higher wages. And there's a list it's like Casablanca. You round up the list of suspects. You got the UI bonus. You have the child responsibilities with child care and schools closed. And you still have people afraid of getting infected and being unwilling to resume their economic activities. The science doesn't tell us how much each is impacting things, but certainly as we go forward, it's going to be less and less the virus, more and more the policy, and I think that's worth watching.
Austin, are we just all trying to look at this too soon? I mean, it feels like we're going to have I mean, I look at just the white-collar private sector. It's pretty clear that we're going to have a slow movement back into the office because, lo and behold, it's summertime, right? There has been this pent-up demand that people want a little more break. Is the September jobs report the first one that will really tell us where we're headed as an economy?
Maybe. I mean, you raise a good point, which is if you put this comeback against any previous comeback from a recession. We're actually on the fastest speed. You've got the YouTube video playing at 2.5 speed. It's just that our patience level with recoveries and business cycles has gone so down during this pandemic.
Doug, same question to you. I mean, is this really, we're almost trying too hard to read some tea leaves, and you know what, let's give this a quarter, not a month.
So I think that there's a lot of truth to that, and I think one of the problems is this recovery is unusual because this recession is unprecedented. This is a recession where income rose throughout in the aggregate. This is a recession where wealth rose throughout in the aggregate. This isn't your typical recession, so the recovery is not typical either. It's all driven by the virus, and this is the first time we've had to watch how people react to the withdrawal of the virus, and we really don't have a good feel for it.